day, everyone compares the United States to other countries. Oh, well, China's doing this, why aren't we? Oh, well, here in Honduras, they're doing this. No matter what country, what size, America's always being compared to them. And the same goes with education. In other countries, children from young ages, maybe even kindergarten, start learning English or other major languages. In America, we don't start this until high school. And I remember that when I got into high school, I was really excited to finally be able to choose what language I was going to learn. And I finally decided that I was going to learn German. I took it 1 year and then decided, I'm never going to use this, so why do I need it? And then last summer, I went to Mexico, and Spanish was one of the choices that I got to do. Was one of the choices that I had. But I didn't take it. So when I went down there, I was lost. Some of my family knew a little bit of Spanish, so they were a little better off. So why should we learn another language in schools? Because it'll just help you. In America, there are so many languages spoken, and in the world, there are over 6,000 different languages. And so how come you can't learn at least 2 of them? In schools across the world, even in America, most kids start learning in a bilingual education room, which means that they're being taught by using 2 different languages. Kind of like in this picture right here. The child is writing in English and in Chinese. And during this speech, I'm going to teach you why it's a better choice to have 2 languages instead of just 1. For one, no matter where you are, you're going to come across another language. Here in the small town of Grape in Kansas, I know a lot of my friends who speak Spanish. And I know a lot of people who also know how to speak German because of the high school that taught it, but they're not fluent. When you start at a younger age, you become fluent faster. But if you wait until your early adulthood or even late adulthood, you might not ever become fluent. And that'll severely hurt your chances of getting better jobs. And the more you learn, the better you're off. Because it's been known that people who know more than 1 language are better at problem solving, and they can pick out what parts are not needed to solve their problem. And so this is why people who know more than 1 language, they can go over countries and do jobs. They can have better jobs here in America. It just means that you put yourself to a hard place and you came through it. Okay, and in this video, it'll tell you a little something.
Special on Sunday called Making the Grade, and as we explore how our kids can start early and aim high, we're learning language could be a key in all of this. In fact, being bilingual is like feeding superfood to the brain. This is according to a new article in the latest issue of Newsweek. The author of that article, Casey Schwartz, joins us in studio now to talk more about this. Casey, good morning.
Good morning, Thomas.
All right, so this is really exciting because in this article you talk about bilingualism being a superfood for our kids' brains. Explain how the research supports that.
Well, it turns out that being able to speak more than 1 language at a really high level and on a regular basis is like constantly flexing a muscle in your brain, and it carries over into all kinds of skills beyond those of actually speaking a language.
This is fantastic, and I wish I was a little better at a second language, but this is something that has grown in the U.S. over the past decade. Take a look at this. According to the U.S. Census, in 1980, only 11% of Americans lived in homes where languages other than English were spoken. By 2007, that nearly doubled to 20%. So explain, are there any particular languages that are recommended or stronger suited for the American culture to learn as a second language?
Well, right now there are about 440 bilingual schools in the U.S., and the most popular language being offered in those schools is Spanish. And surprisingly, Mandarin is a close second, with French a distant third.
So French, the Romance language, is falling behind Mandarin, which would be the business language.
Yes, it would.
When we talk about the success rate of kids actually retaining all of this, is there any research that supports how well kids are retaining? Because you're saying that it really needs to be something that you flex constantly, so that you're using it as almost you would your first language.
Absolutely. I mean, the absolute rule of thumb is, practice, practice, practice. With disuse, languages tend to sort of fade from mind.
What's since this is a growing trend, what is the sustainability of schools being able to continue this? As you mentioned, there are 440 elementary schools that are teaching right now these multilingual educational courses.
And by that, I do mean total immersion, multilingual, bilingual curriculum where the class is taught completely in a foreign language.
So can that trend be sustained as we move forward? Do you think that it'll grow in popularity, especially if the research is there to support it?
I hope so. I think the larger question is, can it afford it not to?
That's a great question. Can it afford not to? I told you I'm going to Spain, and all I know is El Baño and Cerveza. And I will study on the plane on the way over there. Casey, thanks so much. Great to see you this morning. Casey Schwartz. And be sure to join MSNBC on Sunday, August 14th at noon.
As you see in that video, there are a lot of places in America that are realizing that bilingual schools are what are needed. And the first bilingual school that started was in Miami, Florida in the 1960s. It happened when wealthy, well-educated Cubans were fleeing from Cuba to get away from El Castro. And since then, in that 10-year period is when these schools started booming. And it was mainly to help all the children in that area, the Cubans and the whites, to learn both languages. So they would both be fluent and be able to speak either language just as well. And so when you hear this, you think, wow, that's awesome. Why aren't we getting any further? But when studies show that America is 25th out of 34 countries on testing, that's not a good sign. And in the past 14 years, all these other countries have shown great improvements in their education levels, while the United States has just stayed steady. And in some things, that's very good. But when over 11 countries are learning 2 to 3 years of material in our 1 year of material, that's not a good sign. And here's a handout that shows you exactly where we are in our country, in the ranks.
For a special 2-hour program.
Okay. And now, learning all this, would you rather learn another language than just this one? Would you rather had more options and more opportunities to yourself to go and study abroad and have like a foreign student exchange like other countries have with America? Or would you rather just stay here, stay where you are? And some people might like that, but I honestly would have loved to be fluent in another language right now. To be able to go somewhere and not feel awkward talking or kind of scared of talking to someone else, not knowing if they understood what I meant or not. And so remember that learning another language is something that will help you no matter where you are. It'll help you understand things better, even if you don't know anything about it. They'll help you just all around, and you'll be well-rounded.